Okay, so my buddy, Mr. Beard, now known as Ryan Beard. Hey, got his verification back. Very good, very good. Has put a video out called "Non-Binary People Don't Exist?" Exclamation point, question mark, but in reverse order. So I'm curious about it. Let's watch it.
Hey, how's it going? So, as you may have noticed, my channel's name is now Ryan Beard instead of Mr. Beard. This changes virtually nothing, but I just decided that for my career long term, I would rather just go by my actual name on social media. So, I hope you're not too upset with the name change. Today we're going to be taking a look at...
Well, I'm used to all you non-binaries constantly changing your names, okay, so...
a video from a woman named Misha Petrov called Why Being Non-Binary Makes No Sense. I don't really like to talk about my...
I'm gonna be real with you, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't quite get it. But I respect it. I try to understand. Sometimes it's the best you could do. Sometimes you don't always have to get it. Know what I mean? That's the kind of the way that I look at it. Sometimes you just don't have to get it. And that's kind of where I'm at. You know, like there's some people that are non-binary. I look at them and I'm like, I get you. I get it. I can understand that you're going through something. You know what I mean? I just don't understand what it is because I couldn't possibly identify with it because I'm, you know, I'm default mode. No, all jokes aside, I don't go through that struggle. You know, but like I don't think you always have to get it. There's of course going to be some people who are doing it for the grift, but I don't think that's everybody. I think that there are some people who are just struggling with their identity. I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of different factors. You know, part of me thinks a lot of women, the reason a lot of women, or, well, AFAB, not female at birth, right? People identify as non-binary because they're tired of how overly sexualized women are in media. And, like, it's like, I want to get away from this. And I get that. But at the same time, we're going to play a level called the Bone Zone.
Gender much on social media because, one, I don't really care that much about my gender, and two, every time I talk about my gender, I get a flood of super annoying hate comments, but I think it's relevant to this video to mention that I'm non-binary. So today we'll see if Misha here can convince me that I don't exist. Won't that be fun? Before we get into it, I just want to say that...
Yeah, like Ryan's non-binary. So, like, I respect Ryan. I don't get it, but Ryan's a genuine person. So, you know what I mean? That's my whole thing. So I'm like, okay, there must be something to this. I just don't fucking get it.
I know if Misha responds to this video, she'll say, look at this man who's claiming to be non-binary. We can all clearly tell that he's a...
Look at this soy person.
a man. And look, I get it. I am a male, and I present as masculine for the most part. So people's natural
a little bit. Not that masculine. I'm just kidding.
First response is to see me as a man. But my internal experience of gender doesn't align with being a man or a woman, so I'm non-binary. Ever since I was a kid, I never felt like I had any sort of connection to masculinity or being a man or manliness.
See, I did, because my mom would get me a mohawk haircut. So if you want your kid to not be non-binary, guys, you gotta have to get them a mohawk haircut. Or a mullet. I think that that's also very reasonable. Get them a mullet. Okay? Not a big deal. Not a big deal.
And when people would remind me that I was a man, it always kind of felt off in a way.
You guys remember Miss Swan from Med TV? It looked like a man. Peak humor. Peak boomer humor.
So this identity is what suits me best. And look, if you don't think that's valid, whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and beg you to respect my pronouns or whatever. Just dislike the video, leave a comment telling me that I'm a man, and then fuck off. The reason I'm making this video is to hopefully make a few non-binary people out there feel a little less alone, and to hopefully give some counter-arguments against some of the common anti-non-binary talking points that people like Misha use. I know I'm not gonna be able to convince Misha to agree with my opinions because the core of our perspectives are completely different. I believe that gender and sex are different, that gender is socially constructed, meaning that humans created it.
Sure, I will say that, like, it's just gender being socially constructed, there's still, like, a biological root, which would be, like, well, your sex. Like, gender is rooted in sex, right? It's just, like, it's a different concept now. But yeah, okay,
and that gender is a spectrum.
Because, like, everything's a social construct. Like, we call water water. The name of water is a social construct. We could have called it stinky poop. But that's what we call, like, the shit that comes out of my ass stinky poop, right? But, like, there's still a tangibility to social constructs and some absolutes. I think gender is a little bit less absolute, but you know what I mean? It depends on the situation.
Misha believes that gender and sex are the same, gender is biological, and gender is a binary. Ooh. We'll get into the minutia of our disagreements, but as long as we disagree on the core issue of what gender even is, we'll never be able to see eye to eye on this issue.
All I have to say, guys, is we're all pink on the inside.
But unfortunately, this isn't something that we can just agree to disagree on, because people with the same opinions as Misha are actively trying to take non-binary people's rights away through legislation. So this is something that we have to fight back against.
What that means.
All right, let's get into the video. In this day and age where there's a million different streaming services to choose from, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find good movies and TV shows to watch, especially because these movies and TV shows are being restricted based on what country you browse on Netflix.
Oh, it's a VPN.
That aren't even available. Everything.
It's a VPN, guys. It's a VPN. You can use that to look at child porn. That's what makes me so weird with VPNs, but obviously you wouldn't do that. That joke is a little too much.
Showing a clip of these again, ExpressVPN.
All right.
And they all parent Hazel and Sparrow. Intergender baby.
So we start off with a clip that's intended to poison the well by showing a clip of these parents on a TV show who have decided to raise their young children as non-binary.
See, that I have a problem with. Okay, listen. I think that you should raise your kid as, like, quote-unquote normal as possible. And if your kid was like, hey, I'm not binary as they get older and learn about the world, that's fine. I'll support my kid, whatever. But, like, you know, I feel like it shouldn't be a goal to want to be non-binary. And I do feel like there can be a certain level of, like, social encouragement in this capacity. You know what I mean? It can get a little confusing. Like, I think a lot of people who are non-binary, the description fits the way that they feel. But if you are raising your kid to feel a certain way to try to fit the description, that I think is a little bit toxic. Because I don't think that people want to be non-binary. I think it just makes sense to them. It's like, oh, I am non-binary because it makes sense to me. You know, whereas it's this situation, you're kind of just, I don't know. That's just me personally. You know what I mean? I feel like you let your kid, if they're born a girl, it's a girl. If they're born a boy, it's a boy. If they get older and they decide that's not the case, then you know what I mean. You operate from that capacity. But
the vast majority of non-binary people do not expect their children to also be non-binary. We understand that most children are gonna identify as either boys or girls. Non-binary people make up less than 1% of the population, so it doesn't really make much sense to expect that your children will be non-binary. I know some people make the argument that you shouldn't assign your child a gender until they're old enough to determine their own gender identity, but I don't know. I think it's fine to assign your child a gender because being non-binary is very rare. To me, this argument feels like saying, well, you shouldn't give your child a name because what if they aren't happy with the name you give them?
No, let me just tell you something, okay? If I have a trans kid, motherfucker, I know that you're like, oh, I'm going to name myself whatever I want. No, you're not. I have predetermined names picked out for you, okay? If I have a Beth and it becomes a boy and they are now a boy, I'm going to name you whatever the fuck I want. I might name you Benjamin. You don't get the pick. Oh, I want to be called Moonshine. Because, listen, some trans people, you pick fucking preposterous names, okay? All right? There's two different types of trans names. It's either something like fucking Moonshine Wallpaper or Keith. It's like, you obviously there's an issue with trans people not being responsible enough to choose their own fucking names, okay? So their parents are going to have to choose your name. It's not about having a cool name. It's about having the name your fucking parents chose for you, okay? You're not going to choose some just bizarre star sign, and you're not going to choose some fucking backwater Alabama country name, okay? I'm going to name you whatever the fuck I want. You're still my kid, asshole. That's the terms and conditions for me having a trans kid, okay? That's life. Suck it up.
As long as you're willing to respect your child if they change their name or they decide to identify as a different gender, I think that's fine. The parents in these clips have a very extreme and frankly pretty stupid idea of what it means to be non-binary, and by playing this clip at the start, Misha is priming her audience to assume that this is how a lot of non-binary people raise their children.
So today we're going to be talking about the term non-binary and why it makes no sense, and also why it enforces strict gender roles.
So according to Misha, being non-binary actually enforces strict gender roles. It actually does the opposite of that, but we'll see where she's going with this.
So the obvious question, of course, is what even is non-binary? And the funny thing is that each non-binary person, when you ask them this question, has a slightly different definition. Sometimes they'll tell you they can't even define it, and that it really just depends on the person, what that definition, what that really means to them.
Probably.
Which is something we hear quite often.
Alright, starting off nice and condescending by saying that non-binary people don't even know what it means to be non-binary.
There's probably some people who don't. I don't know. What is up with the game? It's like all bugged out. You seen this shit? Anyway, there's probably some people who don't know what it is, and there's probably some people, especially young people, who are just identifying as it because can be a little trendy in some places. I'm not saying all of them do that. I'm just saying that that's probably some of them. So they don't really have like a super rooted out version of it. They're probably just doing it as an experimentation, or maybe to fit in with like the LGBTQ crowd in their school. Maybe that's what makes them feel unique. I don't really know. You know, they're exploring whatever. You know.
Being non-binary just means that you have a gender that falls outside of the binary categories of man or woman. It's pretty simple, but thank you for being so condescending, Misha.
So since we can't rely on non-binary people,
well, she's Russian.
To give us a good definition, on the internet it says non-binary or genderqueer is an umbrella term for gender identities that are not solely male or female.
Yeah, it's just pretty much
identities that are outside the gender binary. So this used to be androgynous, or like a girl identified as like a tomboy or something like that, right?
No. Because tomboys were still girls and boys are still boys. So, but like you're trying.
But back then, the girls still understood that they are still girls. Just because they don't like to wear dresses, or just because they like blue, or they like boys' toys, doesn't mean that they are they them, right?
You know, it's interesting because there's a part of we see. I feel like we see fewer and fewer tomboys and like femboys, and we see more like trans people. And I wonder, it's interesting because there's clearly something social going on there. And I wonder if all those people who used to be just like tomboys, for instance, if they used to actually, if they would have chosen to be trans men if given the option. But since back then, they didn't have the option to be a trans man because we weren't there technologically and mental health wise, that they just settled for being like a tomboy. You know what I mean? Like it's so interesting because like from a psychological perspective, if you don't have a particular option available to you, you're obviously not going to gravitate towards that option. But now these options are available. So it's just an interesting thought to me. Okay.
Right, that they are non-binary.
This is a common straw man used against non-binary people, that girls used to just be tomboys if they were androgynous, but now they all identify as non-binary. Non-binary people have actually existed for centuries in many cultures around the world, and the existence of non-binary people doesn't negate the existence of tomboys. If you
we seem to have less of them. Just saying.
As a woman have some masculine
aren't femboys prevalent now? Yeah, kind of. It's a big porn category. I wouldn't know personally, but
traits, and you feel like the label of tomboy fits you, that's totally valid. It does not necessarily mean that you're non-binary. And it is true that more people identify as non-binary now than they did in the past, but I don't think this is a bad thing. This mostly just comes from society gaining a better understanding of gender, which leads to more people realizing that they fall into the category of non-binary.
They didn't need society to affirm their non-binary identity, because once again, they understood, hey, I'm a girl, but I like more stereotypically masculine things, and that's okay. Doesn't make me a boy, it doesn't make me non-binary.
You know what's interesting, though, and you know, you never know how much of this is accurate here, but I feel like this take that comes off as so reasonable is a take that she wouldn't have that wouldn't have been allowed in the social atmosphere like 10 years ago, like 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago. Like we shit on tomboys and fucking femboys and shit. Because like, it's like, ew, why can't you just be and it's just like, now we've shifted the goalpost so that like now conservatives in some instances can only, it's like, well, this comes off as reasonable, right? Oh, yeah, why wouldn't she just be a tomboy? That used to be a thing. But, like, back then, conservatives didn't like tomboys. And now it's, like, the only available option that doesn't come off as super bigoted. Like, you could just be a, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I'm fleshing this idea out too well, but maybe some people understand what I'm saying.
Still a woman. But now, of course, that's all changed because we have people in Gen Z who tend to be really narcissistic, you know, and they love this term.
I have no idea what being non-binary has to do with narcissism. Narcissism is a personality disorder which gives people an unreasonably high sense of their own importance.
Well, that is Gen Z, but you don't have to be non-binary to have that. You know. Yeah, Thomas Boy. Very good. Thank you.
Me being non-binary does not make me any more or less important than anyone else. Like, it's just my fucking gender. It's like my eye color or my hair color. It doesn't matter at all, and it doesn't make me better than anyone else. Misha also claims that...
Hey, listen, I think that people with blonde hair and blue eyes are better than everybody else, okay? I'm just saying.
That people are non-binary because they're seeking attention, which is very funny to me because you run a YouTube channel. Your entire career is based around seeking attention. The more
Yeah, I'm not. Hey, call me non-binary because I want to be YouTube, but not famous, just rich.
Attention you get, the more money you make. And it's the same for me as a YouTuber. Most people in this social media age we're living in seek attention in one way or another. Seeking attention is not inherently bad. But even if seeking attention was inherently bad, I don't think non-binary people seek attention any more than any other group of people. Are there some non-binary people who seek attention? Yeah, sure, but there are attention seekers in any group of people.
True.
And Misha, you running a YouTube channel is much more attention-seeking than some random non-binary teenager putting pronouns in their bio.
It's all about validating your feelings. I've always wondered this because non-binary people will say,
yeah, but what's wrong with validating your feelings, though? Like, why is it a bad thing?
I don't feel like a woman. I don't feel like a man. What do you mean by that?
It's not really about feelings in an emotional sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine... because it's a good question. See, the problem is if you were just asking this question, like I would, like I don't fucking get it. Like, what does it mean to feel like this? I think that it's, I don't know, man. I just don't know. Like, I don't know. That just doesn't make sense to them. You know, I don't know. Yeah, but I'm asking like legit, like what what are you talking about? You know. But not everybody asks like that. A lot of people are just asking to be like dishonest and be like invalidating. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, doggy?
It's about someone's internal perception of themselves. This is how a lot of social constructs work. For example, I love SmackDown versus Raw. I can't explain why. It's just a feeling.
Kind of similar, actually. Okay.
Construct that's kind of similar to the gender spectrum is the political spectrum. If you identify as a conservative, for example, that's because you perceive yourself as a conservative. And if I were to say, actually, you're not a conservative, you're a leftist, that would probably be pretty fucking annoying because it's annoying to have
the reverse Tim Pool effect.
People invalidate the things you identify as for no good reason. Conservatives love to ask the gotcha question, what is a woman, to invalidate trans women. I would define a woman as a person with a gender identity on one end of the gender spectrum opposite man. But beyond...
Yeah, so, well, the reason he's using that is because he's trying not to give, like, the circular definition, right? Because if you said, what is a woman? The answer is usually to this. It's usually a woman is somebody who identifies as a woman, genuinely identifies as a woman, and genuinely does their best to express themselves in society as a woman. And then the next step is like, well, you answered what is a woman. It's a circular definition, right? You said a woman is a woman, basically. It's like, yeah, for sure. Then you explore that a little bit deeper and you say, okay, the reason that you say expresses himself as a woman is because based on like societal constructs, there's going to be a multitude of different things that women would identify with. Like, for instance, women in our society tend to have longer hair, but they also don't have to have longer hair, right? They tend to be shaven armpits, but you don't have to have shaven armpits, right? They tend to have a particular weight distribution in their hips to make them wider, but you don't actually have to, right? Because we know biological women who don't have these characteristics, right? And so that's the answer. Now, a lot of conservatives will be like, no, it's somebody with like a uterus. And it's like, okay, that's fair. And then the next question is, this is always my next question. Is what bathroom should this person go in? Right? What bathroom should Blair White go in? What bathroom do you think that Blair White should use? Now, if you're saying that Blair White should use the man's bathroom because they're a trans woman, I mean, I just disagree. I'd feel uncomfortable with a fucking woman in the bathroom with me. So you'd probably say that person belongs in the woman's bathroom. And then if we looked at somebody like Buck Angel, you'd say this person probably belongs in the man's bathroom, right? But Buck Angel is a biological woman. Blair White's a biological man. They're trans. But I wouldn't feel comfortable with this person because they're a very masculine, like a man, in the bathroom with my wife, right? I don't think that's unfair. So now we've already established that most honest conservatives would be like, you're right. Maybe we don't solely look at these things based on that. Okay? So there you go. Now I can understand people who wouldn't be considered passable. Why you say that you wouldn't be comfortable with them in the bathroom, I get that. That's a whole different conversation, right? But that's just a conversation about how we should provide universal health care and access to gender-affirming hormones for people. So, yeah.
That what exactly it means to be a woman is going to be different depending on what woman you ask. But this is how a lot of social constructs work. And I can turn this exact same gotcha question around on conservatives. What exactly is a conservative?
You want to know what a woman actually is? Crying, Target, Squishmallow. Disney. Mascara. And mascara, if you know what I'm saying. It's unfortunately, a lot of women get mascaraed. That's what being a woman is all. That's what a woman is. Okay? That is what a woman is, guys. All right? Just letting you know.
Well, a conservative is generally someone who wants to conserve things, but
like
what exactly
piss.
are they trying to conserve? That will change depending on what conservative you ask. Some would say they're trying to conserve Christian values, or family values, or Western values, or traditional values, or capitalist values. But not all conservatives are Christians. Not all conservatives want to raise a family. Not all conservatives are from the West. What exactly does traditional mean? That also has a million definitions. And not even all conservatives are capitalists. There actually are some people who identify as conservative communists. They are very rare, but they do exist. The point that I'm trying to make is, what exactly it means to be a conservative will change depending on what conservative you ask, because there is an element of subjectivity to conservatism as a social construct. In the same way, what exactly it means to be a woman will change depending on what woman you ask.
I'm sorry I got Sonic stuck in my head, but it just is.
And I know your response to that would be, actually, a woman is an adult human female. But again, I think that gender and sex are different, and you think gender and sex are the same, and there's not really anything I can say to convince you otherwise.
I don't feel like a woman. I don't feel like a man. What do you mean by that? You don't feel like you have the body parts of a man, or you don't have the body parts of a woman?
See, when you bring up body parts, you're referring to sex, not gender. Your gender is not inherently tied to your body parts.
Maybe what you really mean is that you don't feel like you enjoy stereotypically feminine, activities or things, or stereotypically masculine activities.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Latchkey Goth Boy, what do you think? Because you're not that you, but we had a conversation. You're trans. Like, what do you think about this topic? Because I'm not a non-binary person. I don't think you are either, or are you? I don't remember. Fuck. But I don't know. I feel like it's probably a little deeper than that. I don't know.
And that's okay.
I just feel like we don't have to all understand everything. You know what I mean?
But that doesn't mean that you are non-binary.
Here's the thing. Gender kind of is constructed around a collection of stereotypes, but so are a lot of social constructs. For example, conservatives tend to be pro-religion, pro-life, pro-gun, pro-capitalism, pro-police, etc. These are a collection of stereotypes associated with conservatives. But you could, for example, have a conservative who's anti-gun but still identifies as a conservative. That would not invalidate their identity as a conservative. And, get this, there are people who fall in the middle of the political spectrum who feel like they don't fall into the binary categories of liberal or conservative.
Oh, non-binary religious person.
These people identify as moderates. Being non-binary is kind of like being a moderate, because you don't feel like you fall into the binary categories of man or woman. And there are people who identify as apolitical, meaning they don't identify with a certain political party. And there are people who are agender, meaning they don't identify with a specific gender. I have never seen someone like Misha say, you can't identify as a moderate, you have to identify as either a conservative or a liberal, because politics are a binary. For some reason, people like Misha can totally wrap their heads around the idea of social constructs as a spectrum when it comes to people's political identities, but not when it comes to people's gender identities, because they're stuck viewing gender and sex as the same thing. Deep down, people like Misha understand how spectrums work.
I think Misha's just Russian. Russian people just hate gay people and trans people, so. Russian people are good people, but your country, not so good.
They just don't want to accept that gender is a spectrum.
And I could easily say, I don't feel like a human. I'm an alien. And then I can go around telling people that they must affirm my alien identity. Now,
the problem I have with this argument is that, like, you're just not being genuine, right? So there's like the one thing I do know is that I would say most non-binary people aren't going around saying they're non-binary as like a grift. Do I think some of them are trending? Sure. Some of them, maybe they're grifting. Maybe they're probably, there's some of them that are just like probably young kids that want to fit in, and they want to fit in with the LGBTQ community, right? But like, just generally speaking, I don't think it, like, most of it doesn't come from like a place of like grifting. So you're like, what if I identified as a textbook? And it's like, okay, but like, you don't actually genuinely identify as a fucking textbook, right? You're just doing it to make fun of, like, it's not that kind of choice. You know, it's like the same choice that I have of like what fucking food I want to eat. Like my taste buds literally will tell me that I cannot have certain foods. Okay, like, you know, or maybe there's something that's better than that to compare it to. But like that's pretty much what it is. It's not like this. It's one of those things where a lot of the choices that you make come from what you want to do. They don't like. Right, so like non-binary people feel this way. Just like if you read books every day, you feel like reading a book every day, right? Like you're not going to force yourself to like read a book if you hate books or something. You know what I mean? Like let's say you love reading books, but you hate soccer. You're obviously going to like enjoy playing. You could play soccer, but you really enjoy reading books. So you're going to read a fucking book. It's like that. You know what I mean? It's not like they made the choice to be non-binary and then they're acting a certain way. It's that they have a certain feeling that makes them want to be non-binary. Right? It's like that.
An alien self?
Aliens are not social constructs. If they did theoretically exist, they would be physical beings, not socially constructed identities. It's the same as when people say, can I identify as an attack helicopter? No, you can't identify as an attack helicopter because attack helicopters aren't social constructs.
Non-binary, it's not.
The way we construct them are technically, but
not real. You are not both genders and you are not neither gender. You have a gender. You may not like the stereotypes associated with your gender. That's understandable. But there's a much easier solution to that than to say, okay, I'm a genderless being. I'm floating around in space, so you have to play along with my delusion to make me feel good?
Basically, her perspective boils down.
What's your pronouns?
I'm a male. I'm a man. I'm a he. I don't get into that mentally ill stuff.
Okay. I'm Z-Zer. What you feel about that?
Yeah.
Mental illness is contagious.
What's your pronouns?
I thought he was going to do another mind boom.
In my opinion, the delusional perspective is to act like gender and sex are the same thing, or to act like gender isn't a social construct.
Okay.
The
Yeah, cool.
gender
Send me the
spectrum
video.
exists because people created it. You don't get to pretend like it doesn't exist just because it hurts your feelings. In the same way, humans created the English language, and you don't get to
The best language, by the way.
pretend like English doesn't exist if
best
you don't
language.
like English.
The best language.
Fact of the matter is, gender exists
No, it's incredibly unnecessarily hard language, but that's part of what makes it the best language.
because people created it, and facts don't care about your feelings.
The truth hurts, but it's the truth, okay? Non-binary, you're not
she got
non-binary.
you.
I'm sorry to break it to you. You are either a man or a woman.
Well,
What a brave take to say that as a conservative.
guess what, Misha? If I'm not non-binary, then you're a leftist. I know better about your political identity than you do, dumbass. I have no reason to respect your identity. Also, I've decided that your name isn't Misha anymore. It's Bisha. You're Bisha now. And if you don't like being called Bisha, I'm sorry, but the truth hurts, Bisha.
Like, no one cares about your truth. My truth can easily be that I am not a human. That's not the truth. It doesn't matter what my truth is. Because
Well, if we saw a phenomenon of people who actually genuinely thought that they weren't humans, I guess we could have that conversation later. But the thing is that people have the capacity to be men and women. People don't have the capacity to be not people, right? That's kind of where it comes from, right? A lot of what makes us man and women has to do with like hormone balances and different aspects there. I don't doubt that there are people that are born with like the brain chemistry of a woman, but like the physical biology of like a man, right? So like it makes rational sense why somebody would be not non-binary or trans. It doesn't really make rational sense why you're like, I'm not a fucking human being. It's like, well, you literally can't not be a human being. It's a very different thing.
I'm delusional if I say that, right?
I also don't like the phrase my truth because truth is
My
objective.
truth.
It can be difficult to find the truth, but truth itself isn't subjective. So I think the phrase my truth is kind of stupid. However, people's identities are dependent on if they believe their identities
What
are
is
true.
happening here?
You believe that you're a conservative named Misha, so you expect everyone to call you Misha the conservative. I'm actually not 100% sure you identify as a conservative, but as we've already established, I have no reason to respect your identity, so I don't give a fuck. You are what I say you are, Bisha.
Maybe you're a more feminine man. That's okay. But to force me
But is it though? Because the conservative side is like screaming at men for not being masculine enough. So like, is it okay to be a feminine man, or is that just like the pretend reasonable perspective that you're having? Like, really isn't for a lot of people. A lot of people are like, oh, you're a feminine man. Well, men are becoming too feminine, which is usually code for like there's an LGBTQ fucking conspiracy taking over the world, right? But like, usually people aren't okay with people being feminine men. It's kind of the truth. So
to ascribe to this gender ideology.
I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm just using my freedom of speech to criticize your opinions. And I don't think that it should be legally required to call someone the correct gender, just like I don't think it should be legally required to call someone the correct name. But I do think that refusing to call someone by their correct gender does make you an asshole.
Yeah, just disrespectful, yeah, sure.
But I'm not gonna get on my hands and knees and beg, please, Misha, please respect my pronouns, please validate my truth, because I know you're an asshole who doesn't give a fuck.
Another argument I hear is, but Misha, they is a pronoun, so it doesn't make sense when you say, I can't use they, right? Yes, very good, they is a pronoun, and we use it, you know, sometimes when we're referring to someone that we don't know the gender of, right? Now, hold on a second. Just like you.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
I used to use this as an argument for, you know, validating non-binary identities, because I
fucking hate people who like used to be one side of the aisle and now they're another side. They're the most obnoxious people in the world. Okay, like I've had like arcs where I was a little more conservative and like a little more progressive, but like generally speaking, not really actually. Like more than anything else, I was just less sensitive because I was getting fucking canceled over a fucking joke, and I started to like hate people in the progressive side, right? But like there are people like, I used to be such a progressive, and now I've changed. Like they've gone through, like they think that they've had this like spiritual journey of shifting sides of the political spectrum in this like profound way, and it's like, no, you're just inconsistent. You're just fucking not concise. You're impulsive. You're annoying. Okay, you don't have this grand truth because you came to a realization that you grew up and you had like a slight difference in fucking opinion. Okay, stop that. It's annoying. I hate people like that. It's so obnoxious.
I thought, oh, well, these bigots, I'm going to show them. And then I brought up this example. Okay, you have a new neighbor, and you don't know the gender of that neighbor. You haven't met them. You would refer to them as them, right? Sure. They are going to come over for dinner. Okay, I can't wait to meet them because you don't know their gender. But guess what? Once you see them, like 99% of the time, you will be able to identify that person's gender.
99% of the time, you can tell what someone's gender is?
I already know where he's going to go with, or them. I don't know. I'm going to call you he, Ryan. Hopefully that's one of your pronouns. I don't fucking know. I'm so confused. I think Ryan is going to go with the fact that before they, I don't know. Ryan said, I still know what it is. That 1% of people are non-binary.
I mean, yeah, because less than 1% of the population is non-binary, so they would be the 1% where you wouldn't know.
Although, like most non-binary people, like you could tell what like their biology is, like, you know what I mean? So, but either way, they're like, oh, call me they, them, whatever. Maybe just call them by your name or something if I feel super weird about it.
And if you can't tell someone's gender, just ask them what it is, and they'll tell you, and then you say, okay, cool. I mean, you wouldn't, Bisha, because you're an asshole. Gender is about internal perception, not just about external appearance. You can't always tell someone's gender by looking at them, just like you can't always tell someone's political affiliation by looking at them.
You know, it's interesting, though. There's apparently a study that talks about how there seems to be a biological link for people who are like conservative versus progressive. It's interesting.
For example, the country singer Willie Nelson...
Like, I think one of the benchmarks for progressives is that they have like really whiny voices, and the benchmark for conservatives is that they fuck their cousins. Interesting, but it's biological. It's all biology, guys. It's all biology. Okay. All right.
Looks like a conservative, but he's actually a liberal, and you would be an asshole if you insisted on calling him a conservative just because you think he looks like one. Now, I don't think it's bad to assume someone's gender by looking at them, because 99% of the time you're going to be correct. You only become an asshole if you refuse to accept someone's gender identity once they correct you.
Or will you...
Yeah, that's why I just don't talk to people.
They, when there are multiple people, right? They are coming over. Their friends are so nice, something like that. Yes, we use those pronouns. Very good. Congratulations, you were in grade school. But we don't use it when someone magically says that they are now neither a man or a woman or both.
Social constructs are not magical. They are created by people, which is not magic. Language is constantly...
Hey, love is magic, baby. And people create love. That's all I'm saying.
Changing and evolving. And as we gain a better understanding of the gender spectrum, the way we use pronouns will evolve to fit that better understanding. This is just what happens when society progresses. I'm sorry if you had a deep personal connection to the way we used to use pronouns. I feel so very sorry for you.
Or I hear, oh, but what about intersex people? Intersex is a rare medical condition. A lot of the time, these people end up choosing a gender out of the two.
Actually, they don't. Their parents choose the gender out of the two. What I find interesting, though, is I feel like when we talk about intersex, we don't talk about how, like, I think intersex, like, kind of shows that some form of non-binary exists in some capacity, right? So intersex is like your body was born in a way where you had both male and female parts in some capacity, right? Just as, like, being trans depending on like, you know, what kind of trans you are, whatever, whether you're non-binary or whatever. I don't know. I'm being weird. But being trans is basically that, but for your brain. That's how I interpret it. Like a mixture between like your biology and like whatever genetics you have versus also like the gene washing in the womb. Maybe some of it's socialized too. But like you basically have intersex of the brain. That's how I look at it. Right? Like there's two halves of people. There's their mind and there's their body. Okay? And then there's three halves for me because I have a huge cock. I have huge. Okay, they don't. But you understand the point. Okay.
A lot of times, intersex people end up choosing a gender out of the two. So what you're saying is, sometimes intersex people don't choose a gender out of the two, which means you're validating the existence of non-binary people.
It's a rare medical condition. If there was a conjoined twin born, so should we change our, vocabulary, and in bio, should we just start teaching kids, hey, there's a spectrum of how many legs you can have, because of course there are some conjoined twins born sometimes with 3 legs. So humans in general, there's like a spectrum of how many legs humans have, instead of just saying, oh, humans have 2 legs, right?
Maybe. I think that there are more trans people than conjoined twins, but okay.
That's what that argument is like when you're saying that, but what about intersex people, this rare medical condition that literally has nothing to do with being non-binary.
You do realize that conjoined twins are 2 separate people, right? So that has nothing to do with how many legs humans have. But anyway, throughout human history, as far as I can tell, there have only been a few documented cases of—
Damn. Hey, listen, let me tell you something. I don't have a 3rd leg, but some guys have 3rd legs, okay? Okay, did you see the Pam and Tommy show, guys? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Of humans born with extra legs, but there are millions and millions of people who are born intersex. Being intersex is actually about as common as being born with red hair. And red hair—
is it? What is it, like 1%, less than—
Being intersex is actually about as—
1.7%. I think that's high, but maybe that is true. Is that the number, or was it like 0.8? Either way, that makes sense. Wow. Somewhat
common as being born with red hair. And red hair actually stems from genetic mutations. Would you say that red hair isn't a real hair color because it comes from a rare medical condition? The more research geneticists do into sex, the more complicated they realize sex—
I thought it was like lower than that. But like somebody got the statistic wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh yeah, it's not 1.7. It's actually much lower than that. I forget what's wrong with that statistic. But it's actually like much lower than 1.7. I forget what they had said. Yeah, it says that 1.7% of the population is born with intersex traits, but that doesn't make them intersex. Just like if you were born with traits of autism doesn't mean that you're autistic, right? Like there are going to be different like identifications. It's much lower than 1.7%. I'm going to look into it a little bit more because I remember this as we talk.
And they've realized that sex is actually bimodal.
And intersex people still exist, but
not a rigid binary like scientists used to think. And yes, in the study of biology, it's important to understand that just because someone is atypical, that doesn't make them any less valid as a human being. And scientific language has to evolve to include atypical people. For example, neurodivergent people are atypical. As science evolves, we've realized that not only neurotypical people exist, neurodivergent people also exist, so the way we speak about the brain has to evolve. In the same way, the more research we do into sex, we realize that intersex people also exist, so the way we talk about sex has to evolve. And in the same way, as we research gender, we realize that transgender people also exist, so the way we talk about gender has to evolve.
They're taking an abnormal—
Yeah, so I'm reading through this here. So basically, this suggestion that the prevalence is as high as 1.7% is attracted wide attention in both the scholarly press and the popular media. Many reviewers are not aware that this figure includes conditions of most clinicians do not recognize an intersex, such as Klinder, whatever, this syndrome, Turner syndrome. And this syndrome is this genetic condition that results when a boy is born with an extra chromosome of the X chromosome. Turner syndrome. So things that like wouldn't really actually make you intersex in any meaningful capacity. It results in X chromosome, sex chromosome. Okay, missing when there's partially an X chromosome missing. So yeah, it's actually 0.018%. It's 100 times lower than 1.7%. It's just something to keep in mind that this figure is a little bit inflated. It's not like actually generally recognized. It doesn't change Mr. Beard's or Ryan's argument, but it's important to understand, I think, that like, you know, the 1.7% is very overly stated when it comes to intersex. So yeah, love your content. I'll stop watching the live. Currently going through the Mr. Beast Lex remake. All right, cool. So yeah, just something. I just want to throw it out there, just as like a slight correction.
And saying that now we should change all of the, you know, vocabulary, and society has to now think about gender in a completely different way. That is not based in reality.
Why? We constantly are shifting the way we think about and interpret things all the time. Who cares? We had this argument all the time. Like, this is just how the world works. We're constantly shifting our understanding of everything all the time.
All.
Yes, sometimes you do have to restructure society.
And it's not a massive restructure. Like, it doesn't really matter that much.
To stay up to date with the current sociological and biological research. This is very literally how science works. We used to live in a society where we thought the Earth was flat, but once scientists realized that the Earth was round, we had to restructure society around the understanding that the Earth was round. Most things in science don't fall into neat, perfect binaries. I'm sorry if that threatens your conservative worldview, but you're the one who needs to learn to live in reality.
It is true. Like, think about it. Pee, poo, that's a binary. Diarrhea, that's in the middle somewhere. We've always been dealing in bimodal diarrheas, guys. Bimodal excrement. Vomit, where does that fall into play? Intersex, I don't know. Interpoop, right? Outer poop, hemorrhoids. Where cum comes where the pee comes out. And then after, when I have a boner, I can't pee. And then when I finally can pee, it gets everywhere because I have a boner. And it just shoots at the back of the toilet seat like a rocket. It's just like, you know, everything is so complicated. You know what I mean? I miss the days of where I wore a diaper. I'm just kidding. I'm just being so fucking stupid right now.
But the problem is this is hurting a lot of people, and those people are actually children. Because now children are being indoctrinated into thinking that they are neither gender or both or whatever, and then encouraged by parents, by schools, and by Big Pharma to medically transition.
Okay, first of all, I'm sure that there are some parents that are like annoying and woke, like those fucking parents that like the throuple that was raising their kids. I don't think that you should raise your kids non-binary. You should, your kid, if they're born a boy, is a boy. If they're born a girl, is a girl. And as time goes on, they can change. Like, you know, whatever. You know what I mean? That being said, I hate this concept of like Big Pharma is grifting to try to medically transition kids for money. And that's a huge problem. But when insulin is 1,000 times more expensive than it costs to produce, that's just LOL capitalism. Like, where the fuck do we draw the line? If you have such a problem where you think that like people are trying to sell the idea of being trans to fucking kids for money, why aren't you criticizing our healthcare system? If you remove, at least mostly remove, the financial incentive, this wouldn't be a problem. It's only a problem. It's only a problem when it comes to fucking trans people. But when it comes to people with fucking diabetes or cancer, all of a sudden, that's just LOL capitalism, and we need to maintain that. It's just stupid. You don't actually care about this point. You don't care about any form of the broken healthcare system. Or you would be an active advocate for universal healthcare. But you're not. It's just like, it's just being against healthcare just to fucking spite trans people. That's the truth.
And then they're pushing these kids into believing this and getting hormones, getting surgeries. Of course, they cannot consent to this.
And of course, now we're on to the indoctrination claims. I do find it very funny that a lot of the people who claim that trans people are trying to indoctrinate their children into religion from the day they're born, but I digress. I obviously do not think that any child should be pressured into being trans. Definitely not in the way that religious people pressure their children into being religious. Sorry. All I think we should do—
Or the priest pressures you into touching his penis through the confession stand. Okay. I'm sorry.
Is tell children that trans people exist, and then if one of them realizes that they are trans, then we should support them in whatever way the current psychological research shows is best. I do not think that they should get life-changing surgeries until they're an adult, and I do think that doctors should be educating trans people on the risks of gender-affirming surgeries.
Yeah, for the most part, I think that they are, but this is also somewhat new of a field, so unfortunately, some people are going to like have negative experiences. It's just the unfortunate reality of life, you know? Like, I feel bad for transitioners who are either like falsely diagnosed in some capacity. You know, one of the problems though too is that they're like, nowadays you can go on the internet and you can figure out like what you have to say to a therapist for them to think that you're trans, because it's a mental health issue. There's no physical like There's no physical test that you could do, and if you're really convincing, because you like, you know what I mean, like for some reason you decided to be a fucking idiot. I mean, like, how is that the therapist's fault, or is that like your fault for lying? You know what I mean? But I feel bad for people who detransition, because there probably are doctors that are too pushy. I'm sure that's true, but that's like saying, hey, we need to fix the system. There might be some doctors who are overly affirming, isn't the same as removing any affirming care in general. You know.
But unlike Misha, I do think that trans children should be shown love, support, and validation
and
so they're
punches.
less likely to kill themselves.
And you're thinking, oh, but non-binary isn't trans. A lot of these non-binary people are saying that they are in fact trans.
Well, it falls under the umbrella. I think that we could have a conversation about how like non-binary people who identify as non-binary but don't have gender dysphoria are displacing trans people with gender dysphoria, which is a significantly more difficult process to go through than being trans, and than being non-binary. And I'm not saying non-binary doesn't have its own struggles, but having gender dysphoria is more of a struggle than that. And they are erasing trans people to an extent. So you could have that conversation, but it's not in a way of saying non-binary people shouldn't be trans. It's in a way of saying that like we have to stop overly focusing on like what the public narrative is and have a little bit more of a deeper understanding. Because you can say the same thing about gay people. Like trans people are making it seem like there aren't any more struggles being gay, because now we're kind of on to trans. But you wouldn't say that trans people need to go fuck off because of that. It's just having a little bit more of a nuanced understanding. I don't think it's a bad thing if you remove non-binary from the trans blanket. Right, I think that a non-binary person like can have gender dysphoria, but most of them don't. But you know, still does fall under that blanket. So
trans, and that they don't they don't even need gender dysphoria to be non-binary or to be trans.
The concept of gender dysphoria is very controversial in the trans community. In my opinion, gender dysphoria exists on a spectrum of intensity. Some trans
Well, yeah, of course it does. And like you could technically have gender dysphoria that doesn't need a diagnosis. Like I understand where you're coming from. But I think that like that's the same thing as having like anything that needs a diagnosis versus doesn't need it, because there are some people with gender dysphoria that don't need to transition or don't even need to identify outside of like what their biology is, because they can like maintain comfort. And even if you go to a therapist, that's one of the things that they will generally explore with you as an option of not transitioning. It's really dependent on what you need. But there are obviously different degrees and intensities of it. And, you know, we shouldn't get into the habit of self-diagnosing. So unless you go to a doctor and get a diagnosis, like you're not going to have gender dysphoria. And I don't think it's healthy to try to like assert that people that are non-binary have gender dysphoria just by virtue of being non-binary, because diagnosing yourself for anything is like a slippery slope.
People feel a very extreme sense of distress associated with their assigned gender at birth.
And then there's, of course, gender euphoria, which is feeling really good about it rather than feeling like distress. So you might have gender dysphoria, being, you know, a biological male, but you might have gender euphoria identifying as non-binary. So maybe some non-binary people don't need the gender dysphoria part, but they have the gender euphoria part by identifying as non-binary. See, this shit gets all fucking complicated.
Birth, and some feel a much less extreme sense of distress. I don't think someone would change their gender identity without at least some level of discomfort with the gender they were assigned, but the type of gender dysphoria I experience is much less severe than the type of gender dysphoria many trans people who medically transition experience.
And the funny thing is, you'll hear a lot of, you know, oh, we hate stereotypes, we hate labels, and then
I love
they label
stereotypes.
everything. Oh,
they're funny to make jokes out of.
We knew that our child was non-binary because they didn't like to play with girls' toys. What do you mean by girls' toys? Explain it to me. What do you mean by boys' toys? What do you mean by boys' clothes? What do you mean by...
I mean HBK Shawn Michaels. I'm not your boy toy. See, see, if you like wrestling a lot, you would love that joke. But if you don't, you're going to probably stop watching.
My girls' clothes. If you hate labels so much, if you hate gender stereotypes so much, then why are you stereotyping everything? Why are you labeling everything?
When we call things boy clothes or girl clothes, we're referring to the way society labels these clothes. We're not saying that boys' clothes have some sort of inherent quality that makes them for boys. We're just commenting.
They have the word boy and then the size of it.
On social trends.
Oh, you like that toy truck? You're no longer a girl. Ridiculous. So you can't just be a boy that likes to play with dolls. That doesn't exist. You must be non-binary.
You can be a boy that likes to play with dolls. I'm non-binary because I don't...
Yeah, but would you accept the boy who likes to play with dolls? Mischief? I forgot her name. Fuck. Bisquick? I don't remember her name. Fuck. Because I feel like you would probably not like that. Like, I feel like that would be the separate video. Boys that like dolls? Oh, gay, you know? That's the problem with conservatives pretending to be reasonable in some cases.
Don't connect with the social roles or expectations of being a man, and I don't feel like I fall into the social category of man. But my existence doesn't invalidate the existence of gender nonconforming men who also feel like they don't connect with these gender roles, but they still feel like they fall into the social category.
I like gender roles a lot. I prefer dinner rolls, though.
Of man. Again, let's return to the analogy of political affiliation. You could have two people who share the exact same
You used to play with naked girls' dolls? Okay. Well, you know, good for you, brother.
Political beliefs, but identify as different political identities. Let's call them Steve and Jim. They are both pro-gun and pro-religion, but they're also pro-choice. Steve identifies as conservative, because even though he's pro-choice, he still feels like he identifies with conservative values. However, Jim identifies as a moderate, because being pro-choice makes him feel like he doesn't fall into the category of conservative. So even though their political beliefs are exactly the same, they can still identify with different political groups. Steve's identity doesn't invalidate Jim's identity, and Jim's identity doesn't invalidate Steve's identity. In the same way, non-binary people don't invalidate the existence of gender non-conforming men, and gender non-conforming men don't invalidate the existence of non-binary people. It all just depends on what gender label they feel expresses their experience of gender best.
And the funny thing is, you'll hear a lot of, you know, oh, we hate stereotypes, we hate labels, and then they label everything.
Being non-binary doesn't automatically mean that you hate labels. Some people like labels, and some people don't like labels. I fall more...
A lot of people like to be categorized in some capacity. It gives them like a sense of purpose, right?
More into the category of not liking labels. For example, I don't put my pronouns in my bio.
That's why I like to identify as a cum lord. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I'm fucking tired. Excuse me.
Because I don't really care about pronouns. You can call me whatever you want.
This big ball
some non-binary people do care about pronouns, and they do put them in their bio. Neither one of us is more or less valid. We just have different preferences. In the same way, some people like to be extremely specific with their political labels, and some people don't. For example, you could have two libertarians. One just identifies as a libertarian, but the other identifies as a Hoppian, egoist, monarcho-capitalist. These are all libertarian labels. Both of them are equally valid as libertarians. One of them just likes to give themselves more specific labels than the other one does. I really don't understand this idea that having more labels makes you cringe. Why can't we all just mind our own business and let people use whatever labels they want to use? It's called a personal preference. You conservatives love to talk about how your preferences need to be respected when it comes to things like dating, but when it comes to things like pronouns, you hate personal preference. And by the way, yes, I think it is totally fine to have a genital preference in the people that you're dating. If you don't want to date someone with a penis, don't date someone with a penis.
Even with adults, there are now laws being proposed to legally force you to use the preferred pronouns. Oh, they're not hurting anyone. Yes, they are. You are taking away people's freedom of speech.
I do not.
I agree with that. But here's what I'm going to say. Okay, I'm going to be absolutely real with you. Okay, personally, I think if you're a woman that has a penis, that you're better off not getting the surgery, because it's a nice, unique thing, you know. You might as well keep your cute, feminine girl penis. Okay? You don't need to get rid of that thing. All right? I'm just saying. Okay?
I do not think that anyone should ever be sent to prison for misgendering someone. I do think that protecting freedom of speech is more important than protecting people's right to be properly gendered. I think if you're a nice person, then you should do your best to respect someone's...
Having more labels makes you look pompous? Why? What do you mean by that?
Gender, but I don't think that you should be sent to prison for misgendering someone.
As evil cisgender people, right? Cisgender people, it's our responsibility to make sure that their mental health gets better. No, it is not.
I don't think my mental...
That's just inconsiderate. I mean, I would like the people around me to feel comfortable. Generally speaking, that's why I hold the door for people, you know? Like, I don't want people to be miserable around me. So I think that other people's mental health, is it like our priority? No, but I think that's why we have a thing called manners. That's why you're not supposed to berate your waitress. You know, you're not supposed to just like yell at people for making mistakes. So it kind of is. Because if you're saying that like it's not our responsibility, then how far do we go with that? Do we go to the point where it's like, oh, let's just cancel people because I don't care how comfortable they are. I don't care about the context of them being a human being. You know what I mean? Like that 13-year-old who said the N-word, like, guacamole N-word penis with an A, should we cancel him forever, or should we not care about his mental health? You know what I mean? Like, well, how far do we go? I just feel like fundamentally we should try to be kind and considerate to other people and be understanding of them and who they are.
Mental health is your direct responsibility, but
why
I
the
do
fuck
think it's
isn't
the
this thing dying?
responsibility of society to fund mental health care so we aren't all depressed and killing ourselves. And yes, constantly telling trans people that they aren't valid has a direct negative impact on their mental health, which I care about improving because I care about everyone's mental health.
And you can see that this is mostly girls, which makes me think that this is a lot to do with internalized misogyny. The modern day feminist is, saying to all these girls, you are going to experience so much inequality and so much suffering because of all the sexism in today's society. So they want to escape that by becoming non-binary. I mean, if they're not.
So I said something similar, I guess, earlier. I said that I think that part of it might be that like women are so over-sexualized in our society that they're starting to turn to like being non-binary. That might be a motivator. But like that's a bigger issue with how overly sexualized women are in society more than anything else, I think. I think a lot of that has to do with social media being so prevalent and like constantly showing girls like hyper-sexualized versions of themselves that maybe they want to distance themselves from that. That's why I think we have a big phenomenon of like or AFAB women, biological women, whatever you want to say, identifying as non-binary. And I think that's kind of like a valid reason to be non-binary. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I couldn't imagine how fucking invasive or pervasive, I don't know what the word is, that kind of shit is.
Not indoctrinated to the point of just changing their gender to a man, well, at least then they can be non-binary.
Women who become non-binary don't escape from misogyny because most people in society still view them as women. So now they not only have to deal with misogyny, they also have to deal with people like you invalidating their gender identity. It absolutely does not make their lives easier to have to simultaneously deal with both misogyny and transphobia.
You don't even need to have gender dysphoria to be trans and non-binary at the same time. You can just, say that you feel non-binary, and then that's pretty much it. So you get the oppression points without actually having to go through any sort of, discomfort with your body.
What do you mean by oppression points? Why would I want oppression points? Oppression is bad. I don't like being oppressed. I want everyone to have as few oppression points as possible because I want to improve society so people stop being oppressed. Look. This conversation is just going to keep going around and around in circles because you care more about your right to be an asshole than you care about other people's feelings. And I know that you think it makes me weak, but I actually do care about people's feelings. For example, I don't believe in religion, and I think Christianity is completely made up, but I would never walk up to a Christian and say, you actually aren't a Christian because Christianity is made up, so I refuse to call you a Christian because God isn't real. No, I respect their identity as a Christian even if I don't agree with their beliefs because I'm not a fucking asshole. So how about you pull your head out of your ass for 2 seconds and try being a decent fuck.
Just so you guys know, as Ryan Beer gets upset, I realize that this thing has gotten too much help by absorbing other things that I will not be able to kill it. And I think that's the real upsetting part about this.
Fucking human being.
Is this him or me? That's scaring the fuck out of me. I thought my fucking screen just shit itself.
Try being.
Is this real? What's happening?
Okay,
I thought it was my computer, like, exploding. That fucking scared me, bro. Oh my god. Oh my god.
It's a pretty strange feeling making a commentary video trying to prove my own existence.
Scare me a little bit, guys. A little jump scare.
Like, if I can arrange my words in just the right way, and if I can make the perfect arguments, then I can convince more people that non-binary people exist. And it feels like a weight on my shoulders that doesn't feel fair, but I guess a lot of things in life aren't fair, and I didn't have to make this video. I don't have to be a commentary creator. I made this video because I care about non-binary people. If I don't cover this topic, then it feels like I'm letting the other side win. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't like opening up about my gender. I don't like talking about the fact that I'm non-binary, but if I don't open up about it and I don't make this video, it feels like I'm letting non-binary people down because I'm not standing up for them in the ways that I can and should.
Well, maybe you should stand up then, instead of sitting down. Boom, got him.
I've heard some trans people say that we shouldn't come on the internet and debate the validity.
True, yeah. I always say don't come on the internet. Don't make an OnlyFans, okay? Because it's bad for your mental health.
Of our existence, but we kind of have to, right? Because if we don't convince enough people that we're valid, the people on the other side will keep passing laws to erase us. And that feels like a lot of weight. Non-binary people make up less than 1% of the population, but we have to convince the entire world that we're real, or they'll keep trying to make us disappear. And if I show any sort of emotion, if I get angry, if I show any sort of sign that all of this upsets me...
I'm just curious, what legislation are they trying to pass to get rid of, like, non-binary people? Like, I understand trans people for sure, right? But what about non-binary people? I don't get that one.
Then I'm triggered, and I've lost the argument, and the other side wins. But this does upset me. I am upset, and sometimes I just want to lay in a field and fucking give up. I really don't think I'm asking for that much for people to see my gender as valid. I'm not asking for any sort of...
I mean, I don't think people need to necessarily see it as valid. I think that people just need to be, like, respectful, and, like, even if they don't understand something, they don't go fucking poopy bananas.
Special treatment. I don't think I'm better than anyone else. I don't want a bunch of attention for my gender. I just want people to see Ryan when they look at me instead of seeing a man. But I also understand that the existence of non-binary people threatens the way people have viewed society for a long time, so can I really blame them for fighting back against me? If I really am destroying the fabric of society, then maybe they should fight back against me. But I'm not trying to tear apart anyone's family, or indoctrinate anyone's children, or invalidate anyone else's gender or sexuality. All I'm asking is for people to see me as myself. I genuinely do not care if people like Misha see my gender as valid, because she's built her entire career around invalidating people like me. I do like to think that I care about her on some level, though. I want her to live a fulfilling life, and I want her to be happy. I just wish she didn't center her entire life around invalidating people like me. But even if I don't care if Misha sees my gender as valid, there are a lot of people in my personal life that I do wish would see me as valid, because I do seek their validation on some level, as weak as that might be. But I think a sad part of growing up that a lot of trans people have to go through is eventually accepting that some people who you really care about are never going to see your existence as valid.
How do I prove that I'm enough? Say the right words to earn your love. You think that I've made it all up, so how do I prove? How do I make you see I'm real?
Now,
make you...
honestly, not to chime in here, but I do think that this song is okay, but this one's better.
I want Papa God to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.
Now that is the best song Ryan Beard has ever written. Ever. And so I think that you shouldn't even try to top it, because you can't. Okay? All right.
You perceive the things I feel, make you believe what I reveal. How do I prove? Be a man, just be a man. Stop thinking that you can run, you can't escape it. Be a man, just be a man. Oh, oh.
Get over here, you big ball of fucking shit.
I know you've got beliefs that you can't move, so I'll never be real to you.
Okay, we're gonna try to kill this level 1, guys, while we have the hype music going on in the background.
I know
okay?
Sometimes we're just stuck in our ways.
Okay, we're not gonna be able to do it.
Some things that I just can't change. How do I prove that I'm enough? Say the right words to earn your love. You think that I made it all up, so how do I prove? How do I make you see I'm real? Make you perceive the things I feel, make you believe what I reveal. How do I prove? How do I prove? Be a man,
Song's not bad, honestly.
I know you think you're just speaking the truth. I do
I'm not gonna get copyright stricken by Mr. Beard. No way.
the same if I was you.
I better kill this fucking ball, though. I'm getting pissed off.
I hope that someday you will be convinced that my life really does make sense. But how do I prove? How do I prove?
I'm trying to rush this ball before there's too many ads to buff its fucking health, but it's not really working for me. I think I'm getting my shit pushed right now. Okay, cool song, Ryan. I appreciate it. Appreciate it, bud. The song wasn't that bad. Stop being rude, okay? Because I will actually time you out. Actually, I'll go with the... because I don't like it. There we go.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.